This week on Africa Weekly, we focus on Madagascar, where in the run-up to the country's presidential election, corruption still reigns. And we take you to a national park in the Central African Republic, where forest rangers are risking their lives to save the region's dwindling wildlife. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. Leaders and representatives from over 160 countries gathered in the Moroccan city of Marrakesh on Monday for a United Nations Intergovernmental Conference on Migration. A migration pact, which was finalized at the UN in July after 18 months of talks, was formally approved at the start of the two-day conference. The global impact for safe, orderly and regular migration is billed as the first international document on managing migration and lays out 23 objectives to open up legal migration and discourage illegal border crossings. The United States and at least 16 other countries either opted out or expressed concerns, with some claiming the pact infringes on national sovereignty. Describing it as a roadmap to prevent suffering and chaos, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres sought to dispel what he called a number of myths around the pact, including claims it will allow the United Nations to impose migration policies on member states.
The compact is not a treaty. Moreover, it is not legally binding. It is a framework for international cooperation rooted in an intergovernmental process of negotiation in good faith that specifically reaffirms the principle of state sovereignty.
The UN General Assembly is set to adopt a resolution on December 19th, formally endorsing the deal. Somalia was plunged into fresh political problems on Monday after a motion to impeach President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed for alleged abuse of office cleared a key hurdle. Parliament Speaker Mohamed Mursal agreed late on Sunday to accept the motion, signed by 92 out of 275 legislators. The document accuses the president of violating the constitution by engaging in a secret memorandum of understanding with foreign countries. It specifies control over Somalia's ports and uniting the country with Ethiopia and Eritrea.
If the motion is related to constitutional issues, it will not be a fight or a destructive dispute. So what is needed is for us to refer back to the Constitution. No one is above the law. It applies to everybody. The President was elected by Parliament, and the President is accountable to the National Assembly. They have the right to suspend him.
And Eritrea's President Afwerki arrived in Mogadishu on Thursday in his first visit to neighbouring Somalia since he took office in 1993. Somalia and Eritrea established diplomatic ties in July in the wake of Eritrea's landmark peace pact with Ethiopia, which became possible with new leadership in Addis Ababa. Relations between the two war-ravaged countries grew tense more than 10 years ago because Mogadishu believed that Isaias's government supported the Shabab Islamist militia affiliated with Al-Qaeda and determined to bring down the government. France handed over 1,400 AK-47 assault rifles and 3 amphibious vehicles to the Central African Republic on Tuesday in an effort to shore up its beleaguered armed forces. The military aid was announced in Paris in November, along with $27.4 million in civilian assistance. With the armed forces hampered by poor training and lack of equipment, the UN-backed central government controls only a fraction of the country's territory. A UN sanctions committee was tasked with approving weapons shipments since the UN Security Council imposed an arms embargo in 2013. The panel gave the green light last year for Russia to supply 1,700 AK-47s to the national forces in January and gave its approval again to the French shipments. Ongoing clashes between opposition supporters and security forces in Togo last weekend left at least 2 people dead. The protests come after a year of political crisis and failed negotiations between Togo's government and the opposition, led by the regional bloc, the Economic Community of West African States. The coalition of 14 opposition parties is boycotting the upcoming legislative elections, scheduled for December 20th, denouncing irregularities in their preparations and calling for demonstrations to stop the vote. These protests were banned by the government, which warned of disruption to public order as campaigning got underway last Tuesday. In the first ceremony of its kind in a Muslim nation, the Catholic Church on Saturday in Algeria beatified 7 French monks and 12 other clergy killed during the country's civil war. Beatification is the first step on the path to Roman Catholic sainthood. The 19 Roman Catholic clergy were killed between 1994 and 1996, as Algeria was in the grips of a decade-long civil war between government forces and Islamists that left up to 200,000 people dead.
Look carefully enough in Antananarivo town centre and you'll find corruption on every corner. It's a part of everyday life here, as this taxi driver Jimmy is well aware, having just dodged a fine.
I slipped a 2,000 Ariary note in the officer's pocket, or 50 euro cents. He said, "Who do you take me for?" I was in a hurry, so I added another 5,000 Ariary, or €1.25. He didn't give me a ticket, and I was able to get away.
From speeding up an administrative process to passing an exam, corruption is rife. Even the justice system is affected. Jacqueline's son was recently arrested for drug use, but a court employee offered to cut her a deal.
He took us to see the judge. Once we were in his office, we talked for a very long time. In the end, we came to an arrangement. This judge is the one who's going to handle my son's case. He said, "I promise to look after your son, but first, you have to pay up."
Jacqueline ended up handing over €100 to ensure her son's freedom. Madagascar is a regular contender in the list of the world's most corrupt countries. The organisation Transparency International singles out the 3 most recent presidents of the country, 2 of whom are currently in the running to return to the office of president.
It started under Ravalomanana, spread under Rajoelina, then carried on for a while under Rajoelina until about 2014.
Transparency International is not ruling out the possibility that the candidates used illegal rosewood trafficking to finance their campaigns. Mark Ravalomanana and Andry Rajoelina are set to contest the second round of the presidential election on the 19th of December.
In rebel territory in the north of Central African Republic, these men are preparing for battle. They're not militiamen, but forest rangers financed by the European Union. Their mission? To find a lost baby giraffe threatened by poachers.
She had parents, but her parents were all killed by poachers. And it's not strangers who do this, it's the local poachers.
To find the baby giraffe's tracks, Simplice and his men must drive cars, motorcycles, swim across rivers, and construct makeshift rafts far from human civilization. The wildlife here has been decimated by years of poaching.
In 40 years, we've gone from about 2,000 or 3,000 giraffes to maybe less than 10 today.
Their missions are dangerous. This small brigade of 46 men often comes face to face with poachers who do not hesitate to shoot at them.
This was a bullet that hit me during a confrontation with the Sudanese. It struck me from behind.
Poachers, locals or Sudanese, come to the park to hunt for food. To fight them off, the rangers are trained in tactical movement and sharpshooting, but it's a difficult task. In a region with no courts or prisons, poachers arrested by authorities are systematically released after 2 days in police custody.
France this week arrested a former minister and leader of armed groups in the Central African Republic on war crime charges. The International Criminal Court issued a warrant for Patrice Edouard Ngaisona for coordinating so-called anti-Balaka militias. he was controversially elected to the executive board of the Confederation of African Football's General Assembly in February. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.